It was an ordinary spring morning in Europe, March 24th, 2015. Travelers boarded their flight from Barcelona, some still tired from the early hours, others eager to return home. Among them were families, business people, and even a group of schoolchildren on their way back from an exchange trip. The aircraft waiting at the gate was an Airbus A320, painted in the white and yellow of Germanwings, a low-cost subsidiary of Lufthansa. For those inside, the journey ahead seemed simple, a short hop across France into Germany, no more than a couple of hours. The captain, a respected pilot with thousands of hours of flying experience, went through his checks as the co-pilot prepared alongside him. Nothing about that morning gave the slightest hint of what would come. As the wheels left the runway and the plane began its climb, conversations settled into quiet routines. Laptops opened, headphones slipped on, seatbelts loosened. High above the Pyrenees, the aircraft was handed over to French air traffic control. To the controllers watching their radar screens, Flight 9525 was just one of dozens making its way through the skies. Yet within the next hour, this unremarkable journey would become the focus of global attention, one of the darkest days in modern aviation. At first, everything appeared completely routine. At 9:30 a.m., the captain acknowledged a clearance from air traffic control, confirming the next waypoint along their route. The A320 leveled off around 38,000 feet, cruising steadily across southern France. But only minutes later, something subtle yet alarming appeared on the radar. The aircraft had begun to lose altitude, slipping down to around 30,000 feet. Controllers in Marseille immediately tried to confirm with the cockpit, asking what altitude the crew had been cleared for. No reply. 30 seconds passed, then another call, another attempt to raise the flight. Still nothing. By 9:34, they had tried on multiple frequencies, their voices becoming sharper, more urgent. Silence. Controllers passed the call to military channels, and even another aircraft in the area tried to reach the Germanwings crew. The response was always the same: empty air. To those on the ground, it was becoming clear that something was going very wrong. The descent continued. The digital trace on radar screens dropped steadily, painting a picture of an aircraft heading toward the French Alps. At 9:40, radar contact was lost entirely. Only 1 minute later, the mountainside shook with the impact. Germanwings Flight 9525 had vanished from the sky, leaving behind only questions and devastation. Emergency services rushed towards the crash site, but the remoteness of the terrain made access nearly impossible. The A320 had shattered into countless fragments across a steep alpine slope, unreachable by road. Helicopters ferried rescuers into the valley, but there were no survivors. The wreckage was scattered so widely that identifying pieces of the aircraft took hours, sometimes days. Searchers eventually recovered both the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, though both were badly damaged by the impact. Slowly, as investigators pieced together the information, a chilling picture began to form. This had not been a case of catastrophic mechanical failure. There had been no sudden fire, no mid-air explosion, no weather event powerful enough to explain the descent. Instead, the evidence pointed to something far more disturbing, an intentional act. It was not hijackers storming the cockpit, as in tragedies of the past. The hijacking came from within, from a man already at the controls, and as the investigators rewound the timeline, listening carefully to the sounds from the voice recorder, the events of those final 9 minutes became clear in heartbreaking detail. At cruising altitude just after 9:30 a.m., the captain briefly left the cockpit, telling his co-pilot he needed the restroom. The door clicked shut, and within moments, the altitude dial in the cockpit was adjusted. The aircraft began a slow but deliberate descent, programmed directly into the autopilot system. When the captain returned, he requested entry through the reinforced door. There was no answer. He tried again. The co-pilot had engaged the lock, activating a system designed after the September 11th attacks to keep hijackers out. Even if the captain entered the emergency override code, the man inside could block it with a single switch. Outside the cockpit, the captain pleaded, then shouted, then struck the door with force. The microphone in the cockpit captured the heavy thuds of someone desperately trying to break it down. Inside, the co-pilot remained silent, his breathing steady, hands fixed on the controls. Passengers began to realize something was wrong as the aircraft continued its unstoppable descent towards the mountains. In those minutes, fear spread through the cabin. The reinforced door, meant to save lives, had become an unbreakable barrier, sealing everyone's fate. In the aftermath, investigators turned to the co-pilot's life. He was 27 years old, once a young man with posters of airplanes on his bedroom wall, obsessed with the dream of flying. He had trained as a glider pilot, pursued his license through Lufthansa's flight academy, and appeared destined for a stable career in aviation. But hidden beneath that ambition was a struggle with mental illness. Years earlier, he had been diagnosed with severe depression, even experiencing psychotic symptoms. At times, he was grounded from flying, undergoing treatment and therapy, only later deemed fit again to return. Yet his medical history was fragmented across different doctors and systems. Some physicians had declared him unfit to fly, writing sick notes he kept to himself, never showing his employer. Others suspected deeper psychiatric issues, urging him to seek specialized care. But confidentiality laws in Germany placed strict limits on what doctors could reveal. His mental state deteriorated in early 2015, only weeks before the crash. He visited clinics, reported strange visual disturbances, and feared he was losing his eyesight. But instead of grounding himself, he continued flying. 4 days before the tragedy, he had searched on his computer for cockpit door locking systems. The question for investigators, and for the world, was simple, yet agonizing. How could such warning signs go unnoticed or unheeded until it was too late? The tragedy of Flight 9525 reshaped aviation policy across Europe. Regulators moved quickly to introduce mandatory psychological screening for pilots, and many airlines enforced a rule that 2 crew members must remain in the cockpit at all times. Over time, however, some of those rules were quietly relaxed, raising debate about how long lessons from disasters truly endure. Germanwings itself disappeared, rebranded into Eurowings, though for the families of the victims, no corporate decision could soften their grief. Among the passengers lost were 144 men, women, and children, including an entire school group returning home. The captain, remembered as a devoted father, spent his final moments fighting to save those on board. Their loved ones were left with empty chairs, unfinished conversations, and lives forever altered. Lufthansa provided compensation, but no amount of money could fill the absence. To this day, the crash serves as a reminder of the hidden battles people may carry, and the catastrophic consequences when systems fail to catch them. For aviation, it reinforced a sobering truth. Safety is not only about machines, but about the human beings trusted to operate them. And for those who still take to the skies, it is a reminder that behind every flight number are lives, stories, and families who trust that the sky will bring them safely home.